This is a popular little Yosemite waterfall that is very different every time of year. We're here in the summer. There's a bit of traffic. It's a popular spot, but it's a place that I like to photograph most often details. And so I'm zoomed in on a little piece of the waterfall here.
Well, it's interesting. I would have brought my 24-70 out here to shoot this, and maybe because I think like I thought like a landscape photographer until I met you. But where I'm looking for the whole scene, and instinctively speaking, my whole scene would be the forefront, the stair stepping, and the stillness of the pond up top. But when I watched what you shot here with your zooming right in, for example, on that little one where it's actually spurting out like almost like a flower, and saw what you did, it's like, really? So long lens, you love working with a longer lens.
Well, I like looking for patterns, and I found these white lines of the water against the dark rocks makes an interesting pattern. And I have seen this location for many, many years, different times of year. So right now it's not as lush as it often looks in the spring or after a rain, where there's more water flowing through. A lot of this debris is washed out, and it just looks cleaner and better for a wide view to me. So because there's just little sections of the waterfall here, down here, where I really like the lines of the water and the way they're moving around rocks.
Right.
I've zoomed in. But that's my tendency in most landscape situations is I'm extracting parts of the landscape, and I feel that you don't need to show the whole landscape to understand the whole landscape. The more literal you are, the more broad you are, it dilutes the view into many different elements. And now I've isolated what I'm really most inspired by, which is the shapes and lines of the water and how they'll move with a slow shutter speed. And the light changes by the minute in this location because different leaves get lit by the sun, and so the reflections above the water are quite different. But to me, they're an important lead into the smooth water to the falling water.
Oh.
So I've placed that at the top of my frame, and then the bottom of the waterfall is at the bottom of the frame.
Okay.
And filling the frame with that simple, isolated part of the waterfall.
We're not using any neutral density filters out here. Luckily, I'm dark enough that I'm at ISO 100. I think I'm at f16, and I'm shooting at, well, this one's 10 seconds all of a sudden. So we go nice and tight. I'm still going to go vertical at least, but I think I might end up doing a horizontal too. But as I'm looking at this, I'm also seeing how nicely that reflection in the still part plays up there on the grass in the back and the log, and there's some nice things happening back up there too.
Usually when you find a spot to photograph, you have something in mind and you set up and you do it.
Yeah.
When I come to a place like this and I find something, I try different options. In this case, we're playing with shutter speeds. But then I tend to leave my camera. I'll get up and walk to another spot, try to find a different angle before I feel like I've exhausted the possibilities. More often than not, especially in a place like Yosemite, people will have a preconceived notion. They see a certain light or a certain subject, and they photograph it, and then they're gone.
They just move quick.
And maybe something's better somewhere else, but often people do not delve into the subject as far as they could. And then I'll say, well, don't go yet. Let's go over here.
Well, Bill,
I might walk around to the side. I might not be able to get up again.
I might be one of those guys, because I mean, typically, and you might have felt it in Antarctica. When you come to a new location, I haven't been here for 18,000 years, it seems. All of a sudden, you're seeing everything. Where somebody like yourself, or in my case, been down to Antarctica several times, that whole machine gunning thing of like, God, it's all around me. I got to get everything because it's coming at you
like
so
I
quick.
Do, yeah.
See, you know what it's like, but
Yeah.
even you slowed yourself down. I mean, you know, there was times I watched you really work a shot there and go, oh man, how does he do that?
You have to trust your training at some point, and I think 20 years of using a 4x5 is a pretty good discipline.
You know?
And a lot of people talk about Ansel Adams and think of him with all the spectacular light he found, that he must have been a monk-like person who would just sit and meditate in a place for hours to get the right shot, or days, or weeks. And he was hyper guy.
Yeah.
You know, if he didn't see something, he was gone. He'd keep going. And that doesn't mean he didn't learn from where he was and, you know, maybe come back again.
Look at the sunlight hitting that.
That is very cool.
Oh yeah, that's pretty. It changes everything. Woohoo! Sweet.
I'll show you the angle I like the best from here.
Okay. Wow, that
And you
changes.
start to see the green and the ripples.
Oh my heavens. All right, you convinced me.
A lot of situations with water reflections, you have issues of shutter speed versus depth of field.
Yeah.
You're shooting obliquely across a lake.
Uh-huh.
And then you want a fast enough shutter speed to hold the ripples. Here the ripples are fixed. But I often use a tilt shift lens
Yep.
so that I can shoot faster.
So just thinking back as we're kind of wrapping this little shoot up, we used a couple things here. Depth of field with our f-stop, and we didn't mention refraction or anything like that so many people worry about with depth of field, especially when you go down to 22.
Yeah.
But we use it for, number one, not depth of field, but also to help us get to a lower shutter speed. And then we also used our ISOs to raise us back up so we could vary the shutter speed while maintaining the depth of field.
Correct.
So there's a few techniques we put in there all at once. Not bad.
You know, an image like this with the refraction issue,
Yeah.
I tended to use smaller apertures than a lot of people. When I use 4x5 in the small aperture, your enlargement ratio is not so big, so I didn't worry about it f22 or f45. You know, if I needed the depth, I used the smaller aperture.
Do you ever worry about it now with these cameras?
It depends on the subject. You know, this is a very soft subject, and it's not going to make much difference. But you know, a detailed shot, I'm going to try to use the best aperture, as long as I'm not sacrificing depth of field. I find a lot of situations people want something right here sharp and the mountain sharp, and they're afraid to use a smaller aperture. I'd rather have the foreground sharp and the background sharp at f32 and have a little bit of diffraction. It may show up at a large enlargement, but at least I have captured the depth.
So in a case like this, like from the angle that I'm shooting across right now, we're looking at what, 5 or 6 feet. And if you wanted to go to a smaller aperture, would you or have you ever considered doing focus bracketing?
Yeah, I have done it. I'm not really practiced at it.
Yeah.
What I did when I got my 35 millimeter digital camera, I got tilt shift lenses because I was used to a view camera.
Sure.
So what I would do here from that angle is I'd get my 90 millimeter tilt shift out, and then I could tilt across the depth.
Okay.
Sometimes in a shot like this, I'll widen out if I think I might want to straighten up the trees,
Yeah.
just to give myself some straightening room. I'm just about to lose that light on the falls.
Look at the light. Look at that nice spot on that falls right now. Just about gone, but when that blows out, you just get it. There you go.
This is the spot, of course, everybody comes. And we talked about what's going on out here. The view up this way, the side lighting on the cliffs, it's a distinctively Yosemite-looking subject.
Sure.
But most people don't aim that way. This
I mean,
what
it is
I
a
did.
classic view. I can understand why this is one of those views that no matter what you see and how often you see it, you just really, really like.
Well, what happens here is that people end up in one spot and they don't move. So if you pick up your camera, we'll look at the foreground here, especially if you're taking a wide view.
Right.
You're by the wall and you can get this tree in the way. This is not a particularly poetic tree to me, but if you walk down this way, it changes quite a bit.
Okay.
As you come down this way,
The foreground
you have
changes.
very different foreground. And a lot of people, you don't see them paying attention to things like that.
Well,
So-
what they see is the classic image they've seen 100 million times, and they want that classic image. You've got the classic image. You probably got a great one of this, and
a couple.
probably don't have to come back and do it again unless it's so exceptional it makes a big difference.
Well, I keep
But-
coming back though. And then
Well,
I
I
have
can
a
understand
photograph
why.
from 20 years ago that may be one of my favorites from here, and then I came back a year ago and got one I like better. 20 years later of coming back here.
I mean, I've spent a day here now, and I'm sort of addicted to this place. I mean, I want to come back and I want to photograph a lot of these spots at different times of day, but I really like to see this with, that low hanging fog up there, and, it could be dark and rainy as far as I'm concerned. That could be the shot here. You just see it now. I mean, I'm seeing it. I just don't want to.
Well, what can happen in the rainy season, winter into spring, is you'll get rain during the night and it'll be very wet, and then the sun will come out and mist will form across the trees. And in the morning, the sun comes onto those trees, lighting up the clouds and the trees.
Yeah, but on a
amazing
cloudy
to
day,
see.
you won't have any of this shadow or contrast. It might be flat. You can punch it out, in post processing, but you'd have a nice overall illumination.
You need to be here when the light is really coming through the clouds. So the first light, and sometimes the sun has to be up a little higher for it to be out of the picture, because the sun's coming up over the cliffs here. But one thing I wanted to point out is the difference in foreground.
Sure.
If we watch this young pine tree and the old pine tree and walk along here, it changes quite a bit. Is now we have this distinctive, graceful, poetic
changes,
tree
yep.
becoming part of our composition.
Huh.
And nobody's over here. When the falls is really strong,
Right.
you can use a combination of the very graphic, interesting pine tree and the waterfall. For this situation right now, keep coming this way, and now we have a composition where we can work with a very strong graphic foreground and the light on Half Dome.
Really? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah. So as you move along, it changes quite a bit. There's
But there's
a
a
point
question.
right about here where the diagonals kind of fit.
Yep.
Now this tree becomes a part of the whole scene. It adds interest, it adds depth. So I'm getting the shoulder of El Capitan coming this way, and then in front of Half Dome you have the diagonal of Glacier
Yeah.
Point.
This is totally different than how I would have come here. If I would have gotten out of the car on my own, I would have gotten out with the 24 to 70, set right up there, say I've got that shot, and I would just be done with it, because it's the shot that everybody takes, and
Yeah.
I now have my shot.
Yeah.
And then you move over here as you show, and all of a sudden I've got the rules that we want to follow, supposedly, in landscape photography. We've got this foreground. I think if there's one thing our viewers and readers should take back from this, is that when in doubt, put the longer lens on and see it differently.
Well, just the thought of working your subject
Yeah.
is a major leap for a lot of people to make. So when I teach online classes and I talk to people about a photograph they sent me, and I always ask them, what else did you do there? And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, what else did you try? I said, well, this is the shot, and I didn't. Did you try another lens? No. did you try zooming in, zooming out? No. I said, well, see this part of the picture, like over here or over there? Did you think of zooming in there? That might have been interesting. And then by the end of the class, they're taking a lot more pictures, but they're also exploring it more in terms of all the compositional options.
Well, for our first day, I'm taking home that whole concept of, zoom in tight if you can, shoot with a longer lens if you can, and isolate.
If I'm here with spectacular clouds in the foreground and around the cliffs, I've got a wide-angle lens on, and
yeah, if the scene dictates it. So what you're really doing with the light, the jet trail, and the things that we've got as a challenge right now is you're finding a way to actually pull a photograph from conditions that
tough situation.
Yeah,
right.